Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week, along with some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos, the original 4-H's of podcast history, we get together to talk about films either current or classic, all with a lovable bear twist. And this week, we are reviewing a film that is definitely in the current column, that film being The Woman King, starring Viola Davis, Lashana Lynch, and all kinds of other phenomenal cast and talent. I do need two people to help me review this movie, though. I can't talk about it all by myself. That'd be super boring. Jim Pugliafico is with us in the virtual studio. Hey, babe, how's it going?
It's going good, and yes, I'm here to help you with the review of The Woman King, because it's a pretty big movie, and there's a lot going on, and there's a lot to talk about. So I'm excited.
I'm excited too. Even though we see movies together, we try not to talk about them too much if we're going to talk about them on the podcast.
We talk
it's like,
a little only.
Yeah, it's like, did you like it? No? Yes? Okay, great. Talk to you on Tuesday.
Now shut up. We'll talk later.
Indeed. And someone else whose thoughts I am dying to hear, the redoubtable William Lindis. Hey, Will, how's it going?
Hey, Brad. Hey, Jim. Hey, listeners. I'm excited about this one. Lot to talk about with this movie, as we've done 449 times in the past. Excited that we get to do it again for this 450th time. And I'm also excited, Brad, because, and I won't tip your hat on this one, but this is one of those rare times where I know your opinion on the movie before we get into the review, because I may have seen your social post on it.
Oh, yes. Yeah, this movie did induce me to make a post
to buy the soundtrack.
I didn't buy the soundtrack, actually.
What?
We'll hold that for the review. We'll hold that.
All right, let's hold it.
I do want to go back to something Will mentioned, though. It is indeed episode 450 of the Movie Bears podcast. It's a little crazy. If you'd asked me almost 10 years ago, 10 years in December, if we'd had 100 episodes this show, I'd have told you you're probably fucking nuts. And here we are on the 450th episode. So I suppose this is a milestone episode, guys. We'll celebrate 10 years in December, of course. But congrats on hanging along, for this insane amount of episode counts.
Yeah. What are we at now? If each episode's about 90 minutes, we're at like what? Oh my God, 600, 700 minutes of
let's do the math.
Hours of recording. Yeah,
let's do the math. Each episode averages 75 minutes. If you multiply that by 450 episodes, that's 33,750 hours. So if you were to divide that by 24, that would give us the amount of days, right?
Probably. Wait, no, because that's you did it by minutes. You did minutes by episodes. You have to divide by 60, then by 24.
So 75 times 450. Okay, so that's minutes. So divide that by 60.
Right.
562.5 hours. Now divide that by 24. Holy shit, you guys! 23.44 days.
Almost a month. Okay. So, Jim, you are on
That's a month with no sleep.
Heading northeast, listening to going 75 miles an hour, listening to Movie Bears podcast. Brad,
episode 5.
Going 60 miles an hour, starting at episode 200. At what point will your episode sync up? Please show your work.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, 24 days straight, no sleep. That's how much MBP content is out there. That just blows my mind. Won't harp on it, too much, but that's kind of cool to think about, that we've been doing this for that long. But we're about to add another 75 minutes to that tally, because our review of The Woman King is about to happen. Jim and Will, you guys know this, of course, but for those of you out there in listener land who may be new, maybe you're not familiar with the format of our show, we like to talk about most movies, unless they've been out for 40 plus years, spoiler free for the first 10 or 15 minutes. That way, if you haven't seen the film yet, you're not sure if you want to see it, maybe you want to hear someone else's opinion to sway you one way or another, we're happy to give you our initial thoughts. Of course, you should always decide these things for yourself. That's our motto here, but we're happy to weigh in if that's helpful. So, that said, we'll give you a fair warning before we open things up to spoilers so that you have an opportunity to step away. Come on back at the end of the show for plugs. You're not going to want to miss those. If you're listening live, you can go make a sandwich or something, come back in a little bit. Or if you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, etc., use the show notes. That time index in there will let you skip around as needed. Guys, I'm tired of talking. I think we're almost ready for the trailer for this film and our discussion. But Jim, Will, are you guys ready to rock?
Yeah.
Indeed,
let's do it.
I am ready.
Okay. All right. Well, in that case, here we go with our review of The Woman King. All right. I know we've been waiting on this movie for a while. We've seen the trailer a ton of times. It is now brass tacks time. Time to find out what we thought of this movie, where you guys came down. Will, if you don't mind kicking this conversation off for us with, of course, your initial thoughts about the film, spoiler free, of course. And is this one that you think people should see in theaters? Should they maybe wait for streaming, or should they skip it? Where'd you come down?
There we go. All right, so The Woman King. This is a new historical epic starring Viola Davis, John Boyega. Some fantastic performances also here from actresses like Lashana Lynch. This is a movie about. Okay, so it's inspired by some true events that happened sort of in the 18th, 19th century in the Kingdom of Dahomey, which is one of the most powerful states, one of the most powerful kind of kingdoms there in Africa. And as the story is told here, as the different kingdoms are sort of at war kind of with one another because of conflicts that were helped propagated by the spoils that were thrust upon them by the European colonists coming and beginning the what would be the slave trade. That opportunism caused a lot of scenarios where it became like an arms race to capture who and sell off who to the colonials so that they could get more weapons and gear so they can win their wars. And amidst all of this, it follows this one specific kingdom that has this group of warrior women who are set not only to defend their kingdom against some upcoming threats, but one specific general of that army, the Viola Davis character, who begins to wonder if there might be a way to prosper without having to engage in the act of selling off their people. This is a fantastic movie. That, as you can tell from that description, has to thread some very, very uncomfortable needles. And it has to do so in a way that is both respectful of the atrocities of the past, who profited from what in the past, while also looking at it from a kind of a nuanced perspective of how someone can both benefit from something while also being a victim of that same thing. At the same time, there's fantastic action, there's fantastic drama, there's wonderful character pieces in this film. I really love this movie. If you watched it from a very surface level perspective of, hey, I love the drama, I love the way the characters bounced off of one another, and then I loved how really cool and visceral the fight scenes are, you'll have a fantastic time with this movie. But if you also go into it with the perspective, with the understanding that yeah, shit's complicated, and this movie has to tell a complicated story in a complicated way. I think you'll also gain quite a bit from it. This is a very top notch film. Everyone's at their peak in telling this story. I'm not one. I'm not in a position to be able to speak to the accuracy or impact of the film. That's not my place. But what I can do is speak to the final product. And the final product, as I viewed it as a consumer, was an entertaining and engaging one. So I would strongly recommend it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for weighing in with your initial thoughts. Definitely looking forward to digging in a little more when we get into spoilers, but we're not there quite yet. Jim, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this film. Did you come down similarly to Will, or did you maybe skew in a different direction?
I don't think I'm in a different direction. I don't think my my praise for this film is quite as high. I did like a lot of this movie. I do think it's worth seeing in theaters. There's some great performances. Viola Davis is in this, and she gives a solid performance. John, it's always fun to see John Boyega show up, especially kind of in a role like this, where but their characters I found to be a little bit, no, I wish they were more interesting. The ones that I found interesting were some of the supporting characters, especially like Sheila Atim. I loved her in this. She was great, and Lashana Lynch as well, who we mentioned before. But yeah, a lot of these supporting characters were really, really good. I wish the main story, even though it's interesting, this movie is trying to tell a kind of historically based story, right? It's kind of a fictionalized version of a historically based, some stuff that actually happened. And I think maybe some of the characters were maybe fictionalized here, and some of the dramas within the main story were written for the screen, which is fine, and they work fine. But it's interesting to me, like how something that seemed to be like this is going to be new, this is going to be a novel approach, somehow felt in the end very familiar, and I don't know why. We can maybe explore some of that in um in spoilers, but I did like a lot about this movie. You know, I'm going to make it sound like I'm ragging on this movie, but it's just another very violent film that is brought down to PG-13 level, and that really bugs me when they put a ton of violence in a movie, but it ends up being PG-13. Because a lot of the violence is implied. Look, I'm not a guy who digs watching violence, but if you're going to put it in a movie, have it be impactful, right? Have it give us your maximum impact. And this movie pulled some punches, pun intended, I guess. But yeah, I did like this movie a lot. I think it's worth watching. I did have some issues with it that we'll talk about in spoilers, but overall, I think this is a good movie. I think this is a good, accomplishment by the director and by all the cast in this movie. I don't know what they went through to film this or where they actually filmed it. I didn't do much research, but there's some things in here. There's some dancing scenes that are pretty cool, and just even though the fight scenes were a little bit cleaned up, I guess. Just to see kind of the choreography there, I thought was pretty cool. So, yeah, I'm positive on this movie, just probably not as positive as Will.
Aha.
Jim,
So that's
yeah, if you had to give it like a bear paw rating out of 5 bear paws, how many bear paws do you give this thing?
A solid 4
Oh, that's good. That's good.
out of
That's
5. Out of
that's
5.
4 out of 5
It's
is
good.
good.
It's
Yeah.
good. I wanted it to be a 5. That's the thing. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I
No.
wanted it to be like a 4.5, 5, and it just didn't for some of the reasons I laid out, and we'll talk about in a little bit.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for telling us a little bit about where you came down on this film. I think I feel similarly to both of you, and Will, I know you kind of alluded earlier to having heard some of my thoughts already. I kept my post very, very brief because I knew we'd be talking about it on the show. But I fucking loved this movie. I think it's fantastic on a number of levels. First things first, it looks amazing. I don't know where they shot it either, but I mean, I felt like I was in Africa. I felt like, uh, you know, they put a lot of work, I think, into the costumes for this film, into the set pieces, the palace that they built, the surrounding village. I mean, all of it. I'm no history buff. I'm not an expert, but it looked authentic to me in the sense that, like, I didn't get the sense that I was looking at 2020. Viola Davis in a costume. Like, I felt like I was watching something really sort of unfolding and taking place before me. The performances in this film were incredible. Viola Davis, man, she brings it in everything she does. I don't think I've ever seen her in anything where she didn't give it everything she had and the product wasn't better for it. She's just a tremendous, tremendous artist. Lashana Lynch, oh my gosh, she was incredible in this as well. I think she did a great job playing sort of a mentory character to Thuzo Mbedu's character, who is kind of like the audience stand-in a little bit. It's through her character that we get to learn about this tribe of warrior women and what they do and why they do what they do, and kind of seeing her journey coming into her own as one of these women, I think is just really, really cool to see. Um, I don't know how accurate this is to history, but I really enjoyed the story that unfolded here. It actually reminded me a lot of Gladiator in a few places.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, yeah. Sort of like every movie, there's a journey of the main character. If your movie doesn't have that, what are you even watching? But this was sort of an interesting mix of like heroism, revenge, passing the torch to a new generation. I mean, there's just so much here, and I think we can definitely unpack a lot of it as we get into spoilers. But this was a home run for me. I do think there are a couple things that could have been stronger. There are a couple of, let's just say, male characters in this film, one of whom is not a very good person. The other one, we'll talk more about that. But I felt a little like, I don't know, just motivations were a little weird, confused, unclear. And they kept undressing one of the guys just to have him be there for eye candy. And I guess I shouldn't complain about that because, as a gay man, I do appreciate the male form, but I'm just like, why is this character shirtless right now? What possible purpose does that serve beyond, just delighting the eyes? But maybe I shouldn't complain about that stuff. I don't know. It felt a little out of place, but whatever. By and large, this movie is just such a win for me. I'm so glad that we finally got to see it. So I recommend you go out and see this in theaters right now. We're in this weird space right now where there's not like a ton that's coming out. We're between summer tentpole season and Oscar prestige season, so this is definitely one of the good ones. If you don't see this in theaters, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, but I think it would be great to watch at home on streaming as well. I would just say put the phones down. If you're watching at home on streaming, yeah, Jim's holding up his phone. This is one of those films where like a lot is communicated through just glances or like the way one character touches another character. And if you're on your phone, I think you're going to miss a lot of very impactful emotional beats. So just a little advice in case you decide to wait for streaming. But The Woman King, totally the goods. Probably, gosh, is it too early to say this might be in my top 10 of the year?
Not
I don't
too
know.
early at all. I was saying that about a movie I watched in March.
Well, there we go. This is probably going to be on my top 10 list. We'll see if things pan out in January or February whenever we do that pre-Oscars list. But yeah, I like this one quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of like controversy online about this movie that
Mm,
feels like it's very like it's like I want to acknowledge it, but also just sort of acknowledge it, sort of set it on a table, and then step away from it. And the reason for it is a lot of the controversy comes with this movie celebrates a kingdom that profited very heavily off of the slave trade. And so there's a lot of people who have very strong opinions about whether or not you should see this movie based on that alone. And I understand that. I completely understand that. I would strongly encourage you to, you know, if you're interested in sort of the history of the kingdom and again how of the kingdom of Dahomey and how again just how fraught certain parts of it are, read about it, look it up, do all of that. This film is designed to tell a very specific story that does focus on one very specific set of aspects of it, and so it's not going to paint a complete picture. This
right.
is a narrative piece and shouldn't be seen as documentary or celebration of a specific thing. It's celebration of a specific type of story within all of that. So just wanted to lampshade that for a little bit because
Yeah.
it's been the big buzz that's been kind of dominating the discourse for the last week or two.
One thing I'll say about that, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but the movie reflects on that. It's part of the plot of this film, and so I think if you're wondering sort of what happens, where it comes down, seeing the film would inform you quite a bit, as
Yeah,
opposed to just complaining about it online, without having seen it yourself.
absolutely.
Yeah, I found that to be a really interesting aspect to this story is that they didn't really, I wouldn't say they shied away from it, but I wouldn't say they dove too deep into, that I don't think they examined it really, really deep either. Is the whole basically human trafficking aspect to this, where uh and who was involved in that, right? Like I think in some people's minds they have a vision or an idea of how they think, they know about it, right? I mean, obviously what eventually led to slavery in this country and around the world actually. How they think they know how it came about, but all the mechanisms involved in that within Africa, of how these people unfortunately were some of them were treated as commodities, and and some of them weren't, right? So there was a level of there had to be some kind of levels of involvement, I guess, in this. And to me, it's tragic, but it is very interesting how that came about. And it involves, arms and money and, people doing what they thought they had to do to survive, but other people that got caught up in that. It's kind of fascinating. The movie, like it says, does touch on it. It doesn't, I don't think it's not an in-depth expose of that aspect, but it does shine a light on it a little bit and kind of lays, and this movie lays its story, its dramas over top of that, right? So yeah, that was a really interesting aspect to this movie.
Hmm.
I think another thing that's worth noting about this film is that this is a film where all of the fight sequences, not all of, yeah, the majority of the stunts and the fight sequences were performed, like in camera, as opposed to through CGI, right?
Uh-huh.
This is things, and in most cases, because it is just fight choreography, um, this film featured a lot of the actors and actresses performing their own stunts through extensive choreography, and you can tell. I mean, so our friend Hammy, who we talked about here on the show, he sent me a message as we were talking about the movie beforehand, and I just want to kind of quote this as a good reason for people to watch this movie. He says, "Spoiler alert: Woman King equals fuck yes. Viola Davis is a certified badass in that," and absolutely she is. I mean, Viola Davis as she's just like swinging and throwing her body through the different battlefields that she's on. That I never imagined that from Viola Davis specifically, right? I think of her as like Oscar-winning dramatic actress, right? And you can obviously be both things, but we have a tendency to sort of think about people in certain categories. But she kicks ass in this movie, guys. She is really, really good, and that's true for a lot of the cast here. I mean, the fights look good.
Marvel hasn't made her a superhero yet, but this movie is about as close. They have her about as close to being a superhero as you can get. Like,
well,
these
Marvel
women, huh?
I said Marvel hasn't.
No, Marvel hasn't. But wait a minute, is she a superhero?
Well, she's not a superhero in the DC
superhero
world.
in the DC universe as much as a super villain.
Well, she's a yeah. She's a she's a figurehead, right? I guess whatever. Yeah. No. But I mean, in this movie, she comes much closer to being like a superhero, and the character is treated like a superhero, to the point where it's almost like she has superpowers, right? In terms of her physical ability, and as well as do a lot of these women in this King's Guard that we're talking about here. And it was awesome to see.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we started watching this movie, I was thinking about another film that Viola Davis was in way back in 2016, I think, if memory serves, with Denzel Washington, Fences. And, in that movie, she plays kind of a frumpy, dumpy housewife, to Denzel Washington back in the 1930s or whenever it was. If you'd have asked me while I was watching that movie if Viola Davis would ever be an action hero, I'd be like, what the fuck are you smoking? But she pulls it off, and she does so amazingly well. So, hat tip to Viola Davis. You can do anything, lady, and I'll be there for it. Let me tell you. Guys, just looking at the clock, not to rush us or anything, but I want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk spoilers. Were there any last second non-spoiler things you wanted to get out before we make that jump?
You asked a question earlier about where this was filmed. South Africa. Which the same region, same general area where when did we watch a few? Beast. Was also South African. And I'll say from my very untrained eye, looks very good. I think the actual area is supposed to be more like Western Africa that it's representing. So there's a lot of times when like the city of Austin, where I'm from, shows up in a movie and it's very obviously like New York or Seattle. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute, this is bullshit. But people that don't live here will go like, okay, cool, it's Austin. That's very possible that exists with this movie. But again, as someone who does not have that experience, looks good.
All right. Excellent. Jim, anything else from you?
No, nothing else. Right. Let's get into spoilers.
Cool. Spoilers for The Woman King are officially fair game. As of about 20 seconds from now, I'm going to awkwardly ramble to give our live listeners an opportunity to go ahead and lower the volume on your speakers for the next 17, 18, 19 minutes, and then turn us back up for plugs at the end of the show. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, etc., just use the time index in the show notes to skip ahead to plugs. You're not going to want to miss those. Go for it. All of that said, spoilers are officially happening right now. And I want to circle back to something that you started talking about, Will, about sort of the the controversy a little bit. I don't want to get so much into the controversy as I just want to talk a little bit about what this movie does and says about the human trafficking component. Jim, you mentioned the movie kind of dips in a little bit, but doesn't go whole hog. I actually thought this movie made a pretty incredible statement about what was going on. The Viola Davis character convinces the king to stop selling, the enemies that they capture, right? Even if they're not their people, in the sense not part of their kingdom. They're people who attacked them, they captured. Now they're going to be selling oils and stuff instead to support their tribe. And the king even makes her the woman king, at the end, and she gets to help kind of oversee this. So, Will, I'm curious, do you think that kind of overcomes some of the stench that people are making?
Yeah, so I think that I don't know. Again, I have to like caveat a lot of this from the perspective of I think there's some people making some very compelling arguments about the idea that a lot of the more positive elements that are part of that are very fictionalized for this movie. Like those parts that we talked about and are most interested in celebrating didn't really happen. This was a kingdom that had that was a lot more entrenched in some of those negative I would say negative things, very negative things of human trafficking, slavery, and human sacrifice that this film speaks out against. So I think there are some people who will watch a movie like this and say, "Hey, it makes light of this situation by trying to turn it into a positive story, and that feels disrespectful." I get that, but I think there's also something compelling to me about the power of medium to sort of the power of this medium to tell sort of wish fulfillment, sort of fantasy stories about the way that we wish the world was, not just the way that it actually was. I think about like Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that took some very awful things that happened and rewrote them in a way that sort of recontextualized the way that Tarantino wanted to see the world. And I think that's a little bit about what the filmmakers are doing here. They're sending a message about, this is how things could have changed. This is how things could have turned. This is how things should have, kind of pivoted. And I think there's value in that. I think there's value in looking at a negative story and looking at it not necessarily from the perspective of this sucked, but more from a perspective of how could it have changed. I think there's something compelling about that. So that's a complicated answer, I guess, is part of what I'm getting at, is that I think that there is value in people kind of see this one from both perspectives. But for me, I do think that film is a medium where we can see the world the way we want it to be. And I'm glad that that's what we got to see here.
It was also interesting, besides the the horrors of the slavery or human trafficking that happened in that part of the world, was to see kind of a little bit of the gender dynamics that were going on in this movie between the kind of like the John Boyega character as king, right? And you saw him as king, and you have this group of women warriors led by Viola Davis's character, Naniska, and they're all badass. And the movie, of course, focuses on them, but you could still tell there was some gender dynamics going on between kind of the men in the village, who were probably in the position of authoritarian power, but yet they had these women doing all the heavy lifting in terms of, like, being the protectors of the kingdom, the king's guard, and trying to not just protect, but take action against other tribes that were threatening them. So that was pretty interesting. The movie didn't dive a lot into it. We saw John Boyega being king, doing king stuff. But I think the movie was more focused on, interested in other things than just that, than that gender dynamic. So it kind of took a back seat to the, it was a little bit, obviously the movie is highlighting this group of women, and they have the power, right? The movie highlights it. They have the power, especially when it comes to conflict, right? Generally. but they didn't always have the power when it came to political conflict within the village, right? And so that was interesting how they had all the military power, but not a lot of the political and social power within the village. So that was interesting.
Definitely agree. A lot of dynamics going on there, and I think trying to peel back the layers of the onion, we could probably do that all night and examine each piece. But complicated situation, not a lot of easy answers, unless you're talking
Go ahead.
about Viola Davis, Lashana Lynch, and the others on screen kicking ass, doing their thing.
Right.
The thrill of the fight. What were you going to say?
Did the family drama overlaid on this kind of hit for you guys? Did you appreciate that, or did it feel, to me it felt very that's where the familiar part kind of came in, like, oh god, we've seen this before. Where
You mean like the Oedipus Rex?
Oh yeah,
of this story?
you're my daughter. Oh, you're my daughter. And I kind of joked to Brad during the movie. I'm like, oh, wait till we find out she didn't have a daughter. She also had a son, and they're they're going to be lovers or something. It just felt really, really kind of familiar and convenient. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. It didn't really click for me.
I liked it. I think that, when you're telling a historic epic, the reason you see it a lot is, kind of having a melodramatic element affecting a character in the middle of like a big epic type historical piece, is because you need something to sort of ground the story. Otherwise, it feels too much like it's flitting from battle to battle, or it's kind of hitting like, it's not really getting inside the characters' minds and hearts as much. And so that's why you see that, I mean, and if you think back to the 90s, there were so many damn war epics that did have this type of thing in them too, and you think like, you mentioned Gladiator,
Did she have to be your
Patriot.
daughter? Did
She
she have to be your daughter? I mean, I love the relationship that they had. You know what I mean? It felt like a familial relationship, but did they have to actually like go over the line and make it it just so happened that we dropped her off at this orphanage, and oh yeah, that's the orphanage I'm from, and I don't know. It felt a little too comedic.
Gosh,
but
I feel
maybe
like
some audience love that stuff. I don't know.
All I'll say is it was
my expectation.
It was a really cool thing for me watching this movie, because early on in the film, Naniska's got a shark tooth on her like adorning necklace thing, whatever you call it,
Mhm.
that's half broken, and everything. The other teeth look great, and I'm like,
Right.
why would she wear a tooth that's broken? Why wouldn't she just like take that off? It's part of her ceremonial garb. Why wouldn't she replace that? And that question went through my head, and I was like, okay, whatever. That's just a little thing, whatever. And then it turns out she was wearing that necklace 19 years ago and broke that piece off to put into the back shoulder meat of her baby daughter.
As one does.
As one does.
Yeah.
And so when she ended up like opening that what they thought was a birthmark, and the little shark tooth piece comes out, I almost expected her to like hold it up to the one on her necklace and see that it matched up perfect. That would have been a step too far.
That would have been too much. Yeah,
that would have been too much. But I love that this movie like introduced the question to me about the shark tooth, and then had this really cool reveal.
What if they had held it up and it didn't match, and then you realized it was just like someone else?
There's another woman with a shark's tooth necklace that we have to find.
Mom, is that?
Oh no.
Okay, no.
I thought it was a nice touch. I know it's a little Star Warsy, you know what I mean? Like, no, Luke, I am your father, but
yes, exactly.
I was just about to say it feels like we're reviewing The Rise of Skywalker all over again. But I don't know.
Luke and Leia have this kind of like
it
not
works
really, but almost love relationship. Yeah.
It works better here, I think, because this is a story where the history and the lore that exists within this movie only exists within this movie, right? We're not going back 8 different movies in the Woman King franchise to different characters and tying them all together. This is all very self-contained. Yeah, we've seen it before, but the thing is almost anything that you've seen before can be done if executed well. And I think the performances executed this well, right? Like I think both actors were incredibly sincere and believable in just how conflicted they were upon discovering this news, and that created more sort of dramatic cans of worms to come from it. So yeah, I ultimately liked it, even if it is familiar.
Very good.
All right. Any other thoughts on the Woman King before we move on to some plugs?
I would like to. One thing I did appreciate a lot, just because it kind of goes back to, I think, the filmmaker's intentions in terms of this movie not just being a historical piece, but also something that sort of says something about what was and also about what is right now. There's a scene in it's sort of the stinger to the movie, right? Like as the credits go, it cuts back over and we see one of the characters doing a I forget the character's name, but Amenza, I believe. Yeah,
it was Sheila Atim. Yeah,
yeah.
The actor is
yeah,
Sheila Atim.
Yeah. And so she's basically doing this rite for kind of like some of the different fallen like sisters.
Which was
including,
cool.
since we're in spoilers, Izoki, the Lashana Lynch character, but the very last name she says was actually Breonna Taylor. Which I thought was it breaks the fourth wall.
I didn't catch that.
Let me rephrase. She didn't say Taylor, but her last name she says right as it goes to black is Breonna. Yeah. So kind of taking the meme used in a good way of say her name, about Breonna Taylor, and bringing it into the story and sort of like also building sort of a lineage. I thought that was very compelling because again, it speaks to the filmmakers wanting to say something very specific about the story and not just telling a Wikipedia article about like the history of a thing.
I loved the stinger. It's mid credits for this movie, stinger. I loved it because I'm just so sick of movie stingers having almost nothing to do with the movie we just watched.
Right.
But this one was definitely, kind of put like a nice little flourish on the end of the movie, kind of remembering those fallen warriors. Yeah, in a really quiet, well done piece. So yeah, I love that stinger. It was refreshing to see something like that put in as a stinger in a movie instead of something, selling part 2 or something like that. Yeah.
Well, that brings up my last question for you guys. If there were The Woman King 2, would you want to see it?
Sure. Yeah, I would totally see it. But and that one, Viola Davis' character has to die. I mean, she has to die. Like that's just what happens. She has to pass the torch.
Can
I would watch it.
I'm going to say no, but with the caveat of give this filmmaking crew a bunch of money to make another different story. Like, there's some stories that I think when they're told in a very specific way and you have that kind of that bow on them, like going back to The Well, I think, yes, that movie exists as it always is, and you can always rewatch the first one. But when you extend a storyline, it does take a little bit of something. Sequelitis. And again, like if you're talking about a superhero movie or James Bond or Godzilla, that's the point. They're serialized stories, but not everything necessarily has to be serialized. So I would say no, but also give them a bunch of money to have them make whatever else they want.
All right.
I would go with either. I would see a part 2. Do I want them to? You know me, I'm not that big a fan of sequels and stuff, but if they made a sequel, yes, I'd watch it. If they made something else, yes, I'd watch it.
So the answer is yes from Jim. I like it. All right, awesome. Well, fellas, why don't we go ahead and stick a fork in our The Woman King discussion? Some really great conversation around a really great film. I think we all liked it quite a bit. Hopefully, if you haven't seen it yet, and even if you did listen through spoilers for the movie, there's still so much about that movie we didn't even touch on or talk about. So I feel like you'll still get a lot of value out of seeing it. So definitely do so. But welcome to Plugs, the part of our show where we put things on your radar that we love and we think you should check out if you haven't already. Let's go to Jim to kick us off.
Okay.
Jim, what's something that you're watching, listening to, experiencing, whatever, that you want our listeners to be aware of?
Yeah. So a show or two back, I plugged a series that we binged like 4 seasons of in just a few weeks called Yellowstone. And it is created and written by Taylor Sheridan, whose movies like Hell or High Water, Wind River, that we reviewed on the show, I've really loved. I just love his writing. There's something about it. And yes, he writes about the Western. His movies kind of have a Western or Western pseudo cowboy kind of vibe, right? They go from full cowboy to like modern day, like uh, lawman kind of stuff that I've really liked. Well, there's a couple of spin-off shows from Yellowstone, which is a fantastic series. One of them is called 1883, and it's a limited series that follows the family, the ancestors or predecessors of the family that's in Yellowstone, the Dutton family, as they're moving west, right? So Yellowstone is set in Wyoming. This movie follows these families in a wagon train that's moving from Texas uh, going to Oregon. So for you gamers, you could say this is basically Oregon Trail, the series.
Hold on, I'm gonna die of dysentery real quick.
Oh, shit,
Yeah.
I just got a snake bite.
I've never played the game, but I could totally see like this movie gave me Oregon Trail vibes, and I've never even played the game. But it's what I'll say about this one is man, it just kind of brings you back to that time. I think this movie, I think it's very authentic, and it feels really like gritty. It's gritty is kind of an overused term, but it's a word I'm looking for. Just bleak, right? If you've seen Meek's Cutoff, I know Will, you probably saw Meek's Cutoff, but it's a bleak existence. There's danger everywhere, and this series shows it. The series stars, the marquee stars in this are Tim McGraw and Faith Hill, who are like country music legends, which I don't care so much about that, but they do a really good job here as actors, and I love to see that. But man, there are some other standout performers in here. Sam Elliott, who I love
Oh,
anyway, is just awesome in this. I think this is kind of the role he was basically cut out to do. So, do you guys remember the movie A Hero or A
yes.
Hero?
Oh
He
yeah,
was
yeah.
so good in that.
Where
good.
in that he's kind of a washed up actor who played like a cowboy. Well, this is the actual like movie or show that he was the cowboy in that he was. But yeah, I love Sam Elliott here. He's awesome. Just some great stuff. This woman called Isabel May is very good in this. The series is called 1883. It's on Paramount Plus right now. You can binge it. It is a limited series, so it's only going to be one run of 10 episodes. We're about 4 or 5 in.
5, I think.
5. I think we're about halfway through, and God, it's just like I can't. It's not something I can binge because it's just too bleak. Like it gives me a lot of anxiety, right? Like imagining myself trying to survive. Like I'm like I would not survive half a day out there. I love the outdoors, and I would not survive a day crossing the Brazos River, in a wagon. And Will, every time they mention Brazos, I think of you in Austin there because is the
Going to
Brazos
the
River?
going to the grocery store is harrowing here in Texas. Like,
crossing the Brazos
seriously,
River.
the other day I was like, God, I really need I wanted to pick up just some snack treats. It's like sour cream and onion Pringles. I haven't had those in a while. And I loaded up several of my friends, and only like 3 died on the way to and from the grocery store. So ultimately good, but still they'll be missed.
Wow. Well, they have bridges over the Brazos River today, so it's probably a little bit better than it was in 1883, but
just a skosh.
Just a skosh.
Yeah.
Jim, I love that you picked this as your plug for this week. Like you, I loved the fuck out of Yellowstone, and the new season of that doesn't come out till November, and it was like, fuck, what are we gonna do now? Did I just drop fuck twice? Make that 3 times in a minute? I guess I did. But then when we discovered that there was a spin-off, because there's some scenes from the new show weaved into Yellowstone. That's all I'll say. There's some content there. And I thought it was like a standalone thing for a bit. And then we found out that it was actually like to prop up a spin-off that was coming. And, we discovered these shows late. 1883 has been out for like, I don't know, a year and 3 months or something already. But it's a phenomenal show. I'm struggling right now with whether or not it's better than Yellowstone. I think
it's a totally different show.
I think it's like apples and oranges though. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I don't think I can make that kind of judgment, but I am enjoying it ridiculously much. I just wish Tim McGraw would take his damn shirt off. Is that too much to ask? Really?
And there's plenty more for y'all. Like, I get this is a series that I haven't watched but you can't help but like be aware of it just because it's it's like a pop culture juggernaut right now. The fact that not only did it have the spinoff for 1883, but we've also got 1923 and 6666. Like it's got 4 series that have spun off from this one story. You can't help but like appreciate the hell out of a franchise that's built up that type of following that quickly.
Or wonder if Taylor Sheridan is spreading himself too thin.
Well, I mean, he has another series, The Man from something. I forget what it's called. But it too is apparently really, really, really good. But he's doing that. He's doing Yellowstone. He's doing 1883. 1923, which stars Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren as like the familial heads, is coming. 4 6s. I mean, I hope this man doesn't get to a point where he's doing so much that he can't do anything well. But so far, at least, aside from some filler horse twirling and spinning and sliding in Yellowstone, I haven't seen any evidence of that. Yeah. So great pick. Will, what have you got this week?
I'm really excited about the movie Pearl. This has been a fantastic year for horror movies. Every couple of weeks, just another amazing film drops either theatrically or on streaming. And that's especially true of these films by Ty West, who he created X, which came out earlier in this year, a slasher that was sort of set in Texas in the 1970s and sort of felt like Texas Chainsaw Massacre meets like, butts up against like the adult film industry. Well, this film was filmed at the same time or like right around the same time as it, and is a prequel story set in, I think, like 1918 or something like that, and follows Mia Goth as a oh golly mother style of a kind of old-timey girl. Think very much like Dorothy and some from Wizard of Oz and some of her mannerisms, who also is a bloodthirsty murderer who is she's a sociopath who has she's dealing with some pretty complex and challenging emotions of her own as the world doesn't quite give her all the things that she wants or she needs. It's really good. It's a really good movie. It's Mia Goth is so fucking good in this. Such a different character than what we've seen her play. And I'm interested now that they've announced that there's a third part that's also been filmed and is coming out at the beginning of 2023. That's going to be set in the 80s, called Maxine, but with like 3 X's because, you know, and also
Triple
starring
X, baby.
Triple X. So I would strongly recommend checking this movie out if you like horror movies. This is there's parts of it as it moves through that are, you know, you kind of know where this movie is going, but at the same time, it's always going someplace fun and someplace interesting. So, and again, the Mia Goth performance is so incredible. So, it's Pearl, prequel to X. Both are stellar watches. I would strongly recommend both, but Pearl is my plug since that's the one that's in theaters right now.
Will, I have a question. I did not. I know this is so far part of like a loose trilogy, I guess you could say, right? A thematic trilogy, maybe. I don't know. I didn't see X. I didn't see X. I saw the trailer for Pearl. Was kind of interested. Do I need to see X to see Pearl? Will I not appreciate it?
So there is. It's more than just like a thematic link. Like this movie is the prequel story of one of the characters in X. So it is very much like but you can watch both 100% in isolation. Like the stories are.
Well, you could watch them in either order.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, cool. I do think that, you know, having one watching the other definitely elevates both, but they both completely exist in a vacuum as well.
Cool.
Is there an actual Pearl? Is there an actual Pearl? That's what I want to know.
Their only Pearl is young Mia Goth's character Pearl, who is the pearl of her own eye. I don't know. There's no Pearl, but except for her character's name is Pearl.
So yes, there's an actual.
So there is a Pearl, just not like a
pearl of something.
Pearl. Yeah.
She didn't fall out of an oyster.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
or
that's
did
good.
She? Maybe there's another prequel. I mean, hell, at this point, Ty West maybe filmed like 8 more of these movies.
Oyster.
Maybe Ty West and Taylor Sheridan are competing for how quickly they can like dominate their specific parts of the media. Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. Let's see. For me this week, what have I got? Way back in the 80s, there was a movie that I adored called The Karate Kid. I'm sure no one's ever heard of it before. It's not like it's a pop culture zeitgeist, you know, edition or anything. Just kidding. Lots of people know The Karate Kid. Not the one from the 90s and not the one from the 2000s, but like the actual 1980, whatever it was. Anyway, that's not my plug in and of itself. My plug is a TV series that picks up and follows the events of the Karate Kid, and that show is called Cobra Kai. It stars Ralph Macchio coming back as Daniel LaRusso, as well as William Zabka coming back as Johnny Lawrence, who was Danielson's, you know, foe in the Karate Kid. Basically tells the story of what's happening with these two guys and their competing karate dojos in their adult lives. It's like half comedy, half drama, so it's a dramedy, I guess. But it just came back for its 5th season on Netflix like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks. And we've been watching the show for 5 years now. And it started on YouTube Red. Fuck, am I still paying for YouTube Red? Shit. I was paying for YouTube Red so we could watch Cobra Kai, but that was like 5 years ago before it ever came to Netflix. I need to look into that.
YouTube Red also has
no ads.
Your money.
No ads. No ads. That's the only benefit. I haven't had to watch ads while watching YouTube on my computer in a long time. But anyway, the series is fantastic. It's so great that it's back. I fucking hated Johnny Lawrence in The Karate Kid. I wanted that kid. He was a bully to Daniel. I wanted all the bad things to happen to him. And now he's like one of my favorite characters ever in anything. He's so fucking funny. He's such a weirdo, but he's great. And it's interesting to see Daniel LaRusso like all grown up with a wife and kids. And, you know, Pat Morita unfortunately passed away. But they honor Mr. Miyagi very, very well in the show. And For anyone that is a Karate Kid fan, if you haven't watched this show yet because you're like, I don't want it to sully the Karate Kid, do yourself a favor, put that out of your mind and watch the show. It is fantastic.
It's fun to watch. I watched Karate Kid, and I think one of the sequels wasn't like a massive fan of it or anything, but it's fun to see what they've done with these characters moving forward, the main characters at least. And I won't spoil anything, but they bring back some characters that you probably even forgot about from the movies, in kind of fun ways. And yeah, especially the Johnny Lawrence character is my favorite as well. So
it's cheesy, but in a very good way. Like it's a very fun show. Sometimes I'll sit back and think like, wow, this is a story about like, a couple of adults who've let their like high school rivalry turn their entire community into like gang wars. But the thing is
everything's a gang war to them.
Everything's a gang war to them. But at the same time, it's like within the fiction of the show, it's all completely believable and you're on board with it, right? Like, and I think that's what's so compelling about it. The show knows what it is and it leans into that, and always opts for like fun.
But it hasn't lost its roots sensibility of being like a teen coming of age drama either. There's plenty of that on the show as well. So they've managed to hold on to that while giving it another dimension. So that's good.
Agreed. So good. All right. Well, that I think is a wrap for this week. We had a wonderful conversation around the Woman King. Guys, it was great hearing your plugs. Thank you so much for that. Audience members, if you have not yet, checked these things out, it would behoove you to do so. In case you want to chat with us between now and our next recording, which, by the way, will not be next week because will be at Fantastic Fest, which is fantastic. And we've got some stuff going on too. So we're going to be coming at you again in not 1, but 2 weeks. So if you want to chat with us between now and then, let's talk about how you can do that. Jim, where can people find you online?
Yeah. You can stalk me on Twitter. My Twitter account is at JJP Out West. It's right here on the screen if you're watching, or just at JJP, my initials, and then Out West. That's where I like to mostly read about movie news and movie tweets and some current events as well. And then you can find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right. Thanks so much. Will, where can people interact with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Whatever Cove. You can find me on Facebook. Just search for William Lintus. You can find me on Letterboxd, and now would be a fantastic time to follow me on Letterboxd because I'm going to be reviewing a lot of movies at Fantastic Fest that will be coming out in the weeks to come. So it's a perfect place to get some scoops on things that you should be watching. Just look for William Lintus on Letterboxd, and then also TikTok. I'm at the Movie Bear. So find me on my socials, all of them. Stalk me. I don't care.
All right.
I do care. I do. Okay, don't stalk.
I was going to say, when someone's like outside of your house with a bunch of movies and they want to come in and watch them with you,
it could be. You made that almost sound compelling.
That's a bit.
But no.
They're like, I have 25 DVDs from Redbox. Let's go. And you're like, I've already seen them all. And then they're like, oh.
Well, I want to watch the next A24 movie with 23.
You. Oh, yeah. Come on in.
You've got the A24 movie? Here, let me set you up with a lifetime pass to my house. Anyway, all right. Thanks, Will. Enjoy Fantastic Fest. Bummer that we can't be there with you this year. We've been before. It's a lot of fun.
I can almost smell South Lamar from here.
Oh my gosh.
All the BO from festival goers?
It's everything. It's everything
some of that,
mixed together. It's BO, popcorn, beer, other yummy food, ass sweat, everything. It's all
Yeah.
in it.
I'll
Yeah.
never forget last time I was at Fantastic Fest. I was sitting by this guy, and I was on the aisle, and you guys were in something else. I forget what movie I was seeing, but it was just me and the guy next to me. Oh, he smelled to high heaven, and the woman on the other side to him pulled a bottle of perfume out of her purse, and she was like, "Would you like some of this?" And he
To
just
you or
looked
to the guy?
to the guy with the
Yeah.
bad BO,
Oh my God. I
and
mean,
he looked mortified. Mortified.
that's
That's when you've been at a festival for 3 days and forgot to shower.
festivals. And I'll be honest, I used to go to a lot of like like BlizzCon for Blizzard games, and you would stand in line and just be like, Jesus Christ, like, you know, do they know that soap's been invented? So I get it. Like
Yeah.
it's hard.
Some people have different priorities, Will.
Yeah.
That's all.
But yeah, no, I'm excited. I'll there'll be some of people that we know from past
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'll make sure to say hi from y'all and to y'all and all of that as we
Please do.
run into them.
All right. Thanks, Will. All right. For me, if you want to chat, I definitely welcome the contact. You can get a hold of me a couple different ways. One, look for me on Facebook. I'm the Brad Harris, who likely has Chub, Chaser, and Bear friends in common with you. Please just send a message first so I know you're a real person. Second way you can get a hold of me is on Twitter. My Twitter handle is iBradPro, right here on the screen if you are watching. Again, that's at iBradPro. I'm not as prolific on Twitter as you guys are, I think. Well, certain sides of Twitter. So I need more people to talk to. So feel free, add me. Let me know if you want to chat movies or whatever else. I'll be happy to talk with you. And then we'll see you guys, gals, wonderful people, folks, in just a couple of weeks when we return for episode 451.
The
Should we
final
review?
stretch.
Should
to
we review
500.
Fahrenheit 451?
Well, as much fun as that would be, between now and the time that we meet next, movies like Don't Worry, Darling, the Marilyn Monroe movie on Netflix, Blonde, the queer rom-com Bros, Hocus Pocus 2, horror movie Smile. There's a lot of movies coming out in the next 2 weeks.
None of those matter. Fahrenheit
451.
No, you guys know me. I'm the one arguing to talk about the movie I think the most people are going to see. So I don't think anyone gives a shit about Fahrenheit 451. But we'll make a plan. We'll let you know what we're going to do, and we'll
They
be
did
back.
55 years ago. Just saying.
And you know what? Judging by the state of things nowadays, maybe they should. I know. I'm just
maybe. Yeah. All right, everybody. Take care. We'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.